Hey guys, it's Amber Rain Davis from NotableInk.com, and I'm so excited to be guest designing for Alex Syberia. So she has a new release out and it is absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Alex and her designs, and anytime she asks me to color them, I jump at the chance. And then I have to put everything aside because I'm so excited to color them. Like everything else goes to the wayside until I'm done. So we are going to be coloring this card today, which actually has 2 of her digital stamps in it. I've overlaid the flower over the cupcake, and then in the background there, I've also put a white wood panel background. So while I won't go over how to set up the digital stamp, because I'm not great at that yet, but I am enjoying the challenge of learning how to do that, I don't feel I'm an authority enough to share how to do that just yet. Maybe someday. So this is the card we're going to be going over today, but I also wanted to show you a couple of the other cards that I made. So we have this one. This is her Clematis stamp set, and then I've just added some lines in the background here. So I love this one. These purples were really calling to me with the Clematis. And then I went with some warm tones and did this. This is a heart-shaped wreath here. And then I don't know if you can see it, but in the background I have a brick wood, or not brick wood, just brick wall in the background. And I added a sentiment that says welcome home. So there's so many good images in this release, and like I said, I'm just really excited to be here, and let's get started. Here's a pic of all the Copic markers that I use. Feel free to pause this and jot them down. I'll also have them listed in my blog post. So here's the card as I've printed it out on Neenah Classic Crest and cut it down to A2 size. This is it on a piece of copy paper, so this was one of my test sheets. So I was testing the colors of the sentiment. So I overlaid the flower over the cupcake. Behind that, I put an image of that white wood panel, and then once I got my colors right and the setup right, I printed it on Neenah Classic Crest Solar White, and I had to print it several times to get those sentiment colors right to match the markers that I was going to be using. So if you follow me, and here's the blue violets I'm going to use are BV02, 04, and 08. And then I'm going to use V06, RV63, RV66, and RV69 for the warm purple flower. I'm going to start off with the cupcake liner here, and I'm taking both lids off my cap because these are new markers, these BV markers, and they're super juicy to the point where it looked like ink was going to drip out of the tip. So if you take off both ends of your markers, it'll normalize the pressure inside the chamber, and you won't get those bloops of ink. So that's something that you can do. So I put the darkest color down on the left side of the lines of the paper liner, and then I'm going to come in on the right side of those lines and blend out that shadow with the BV04, and then the BV02 is going to cover the entire cupcake liner. So I'm going to chat a little bit more about this paper while I color. So the main reason I'm doing this on Neenah Classic Crest is because these markers are really juicy. I felt like I needed a thicker paper to kind of collect all the ink. If you follow me, then you might know the last few times I've Copic colored, like with Alex's last release, I did the gingerbread house, and I did that on the Hammermill premium copy paper. It has like a frog on the package. And that was recommended to me from a certified Copic instructor. I took her class, and it was something that was recommended to me. And I really enjoyed using it. It's really nice to print your digital images on it because it goes through my laser printer really easily without curling up, and it's just easy on the printer. It's also easy to fussy cut because it's thin. I recently read a newsletter of an artist that I follow, and it really impacted me, I guess is the best way to say it, in not a super positive way. So it was kind of bashing new artists, new YouTubers, new bloggers, kind of people that are new to Copic coloring who recommend papers to other people via social media or their blog or things like that. And was specifically talking about that frog paper. Note about this flower. So basically with your flowers or with any kind of Copic coloring list. So I love coloring images with flowers, and then also this frosting up top is going to be really fun because I find it's easy to find where the shadows go. So you're going to put your darkest color where there is a petal overlaying the other petal. That's going to cast a shadow. You're usually going to have your darkest color at the base. And then also Alex has put in some shadow lines. She's added a little bit of detail to the tips of the petals. So you want to add some dark there. So my darkest color is the RV69. I start with that. Then I blend that out just a little bit with RV66. Then I came in with some flicks of the lightest color, the RV63, and I found that I needed another midtone in there. So that's where the V06 comes in. So I'm using that as a second midtone because the jump between the RV63 and the RV66 is pretty big, and I felt like I needed another transition color in there. Okay, so back to this paper. So, yeah, I didn't feel great about it. I felt it didn't make me feel good at all. And that wasn't the first newsletter that I had gotten where it was like that, where it was kind of negative towards other artists. So long story short, what I want to say about paper, or what I want to say about anything that I recommend on my channel, is that the only reason I'm recommending it is because it works for me. If it doesn't work for you or it doesn't work for someone else, that is totally okay. You should use the products that work for you. So here you can see I just continued to add kind of the lights and the darks as needed to get the shading that I wanted. So moving on to the frosting here, I'm starting with E25. I'm going to come in with E29, and then E49 I bring in at one point because I needed even darker shadows. So I'm going to start off with the E23, E25, E29, and then there you can see the E49. And so same kind of thing, you're going to look for the creases, and you're going to, for this, there's not really a wrong way to do it. You kind of just have to look at the frosting. So some of them I did my shading on at the top edge of the line, for other ones I did it underneath, and I kind of just tried to look at the folds of the frosting and think about where is the light most likely to hit, and I would put my lightest color there. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to show you a little bit more of the frosting than I did of the flower because I don't usually color frosting, so I thought this would be a good thing to show. So back to the supplies. So I think it's really important for you to use the products that work for you. So that paper really works well for me on different kind of projects. I didn't think it would work great with this one, again, because my markers were so juicy. So I guess that's what I would say. I would also say too, don't let anybody tell you that you're not an artist. If you're creating things, you're an artist, and that's just it. End of story. If you create things that are pretty, that you enjoy, that you love, you're an artist. So don't let anybody tell you that you're not. And I am going to jump off my soapbox there, and we'll leave it at that. But I just, you know what, it's been a couple months since that, but it really impacted me, and it actually impacted the choices that I made with this particular card. So I felt like I wanted to touch on it and just share that with you. Hopefully that's okay. So back to the frosting here. So I'm just continuing to find where I think the light is going to hit the frosting, and then put those darkest shadows in first. The other thing with Copic coloring is there's not a right or wrong way. And I've said this before, so sometimes I will color light to dark, sometimes I'll color dark to light. And a lot of times it will depend on the size of what I'm coloring. So these are pretty small areas, so I'm kind of dividing the frosting into small individual areas. They're small areas, so I usually will do dark to light. Here I want to show you that it's important. So if your image is looking kind of flat, it's important to grab that darkest color that you have and add more. So here that area of frosting looks flat. I'm going to come in with the E49 and add greater shadow. And I'm going to keep building that up, and that's what's going to bring life to your image. So don't be afraid of your dark markers. Don't be afraid to add a little bit here and there. And as you get more confident with the darker colors, you're going to see them. You're going to see those areas come to greater life. I really think I could have added even a lot more of the E49 to this image and given it more depth, but I stopped there. So here I have E31 and I'm going to do the cupcake, and I'm going to call this a vanilla cake with chocolate frosting. So I'm doing a light base coat, and then I'm going to come in and do a dotting technique with the E23. So Alex has drawn in these little dots already to give you an indication where the shadow would be, but basically I want my highlight to be in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my darkest markers and add a higher concentration of those dots on both edges. So right underneath the frosting and right above the paper liner. And so they'll be more dense. The dots will be more numerous and closer together. And then as I'm moving towards the center of that little edge of cupcake, I'm going to use lighter colors, and I'm also going to spread out the dots. So the dots will be further apart. There'll also be less dots as you get towards the center. So some of the center will just be that flat E31 that we have. I hope that makes sense. That's going to add texture to your cupcake, but also if you think about like, if you look at a cupcake like that and you're looking at the kind of the lightest area where the sun is shining or the light source is shining, you're going to see less detail of the texture of the cupcake, and so there'll be less dots in that area. I hope that makes sense. After I've added all of my dots, I kind of do one swipe over with the E31 just to soften the dots so that they don't look too harsh, and that will just blend them out. Now you don't want to be scrubbing over it because then you're going to lose all that texture that you added in. It's just going to kind of turn into a blobby mess. So one swipe over it to soften them, and then that's it. And so we're done. Moving on to, I forget what these are called, but they're like those little cookies, you know, those spiral cookies. It's like a white cookie with the chocolate swirled through it. So I'm coming in, I did the same colors. It's the E31 for the base coat, and then I did that all over the whole thing. And then I'm starting with the E49 for the chocolate, and then I'm going to blend that out with the E29, E25, and I don't know if I use the E23, but then I also add just a couple of little dot textures with the E31 to the cookie area to just add a similar texture to the cupcake. For this little lollipop in the back, I've done alternating stripes. So I've left some of the stripes white, and I'll color that in with just some cool grays. For the other ones, I've used my BVs. So I started with BV02, and then to add shadow, I used BV08 and blended that out with the 04. And I actually don't show any, I didn't film any of my shading, you guys. So after I'm done coloring all of these little lollipops, I go in with the cool grays, and I use C00, C1, C3, and C5 to add shadow to those white stripes of the lollipops, the white internal part of these heart-shaped lollipops, and then I also add a drop shadow to the cupcake and the flower down below because it's sitting on a white table, we'll say. So I had thought about coloring that bottom part there and decided things looked cleaner and simpler with just keeping it white. I'm going to share some close-ups of all three cards, and then I'm going to step back in front of the camera at the end of this to say thank you and also goodbye and a little bit more about Alex. So I think it's really important, you guys, to support our local artists and just support each other as artists. It's something that I feel really passionately about, and so anytime I can do that, I love to do it. That's all for today, you guys. I had a fantastic time, and I hope that you did too. I want to send a huge thanks to Alex Syberia for having me guest design for her today. Thanks again. If you liked what you saw, hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and be sure to check out Alex at AlexSyberiaDesign.com. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.